Oh, hi everybody, it's Steve Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we begin a discussion on a set of sets. This started because Boris brought up this idea about where mindset, skill set, and tool set might overlay on the ChangeGrid or might resonate with emotional intelligence, which was the last subject we spent 7 hours talking about. So we started playing around. I went like, wait, there's one that's missing. And lo and behold, you do just a little bit of digging. You find out there is actually a Heartset. And then someone else sent me, and I'm going to go ahead and add it here just so I don't forget it, something called a knowledge set.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so I don't know how these all kind of come into play, but I thought it'd be a very interesting thing to do. Don't mind me using PowerPoint the way I am right now. I guess I could just turn that off. Oh, good. You know, I have to tell you, I find it irritating when pieces of software insist on helping me. So it's like, just get out of my way, leave me alone. I know what I'm trying to do. There you go. There you go. There you go. But there was one more I wanted to throw out here. I got a bunch of diagrams. In fact, if you guys just did a little Google search and you just typed in mindset, skill set, tool set, you'll find massive quantities of diagrams that people have put together on this. One of them I find particularly interesting is when it says it has to be in this order. And then someone else said, oh, this all came from Stephen Covey, but I found things that predate Covey by a significant time frame. So, okay, now I just found another, oh, this one. Doing and demoing. Okay, I thought this one's pretty. Let's put this one up here. What's this all about? No, I don't need your help. So, all right, so that's enough to get us kind of going. So I'm just kind of curious how you guys might go about defining each one of these. So when you think of mindset, what does mindset mean to you?
This is Peter.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say a positive mental outlook saying I can do it, that I'm going to come in this and find a way to do it.
And how would you distinguish that from like, well, the other, see your skill set, tool set, knowledge set. Did I spell knowledge correctly? Anyway, yeah, anybody? Any thought about that?
The word that comes to mind to me are constructs.
All right.
Like those are things that are architected, I guess, or things that we create. I'm just thinking of like, you know, I grew up in a lot of Eastern cultures, you know, before coming to the States, and a lot of that was built on this ideal of having your own mental philosophy. So it's not just kind of going with whatever's going on, but having a mental philosophy for how you want to live your life. And so I kind of grew up with this understanding that there's this co-creation. So I call them mental constructs, or having a mental philosophy of life. That's what I see as the mindset.
It's a mindset. Okay. All right. Let me throw one of the definitions that I found online around about how at least one person chose to frame it. They said mindset is how you see, perceive, and view the world around you. Your beliefs and way of thinking that determine your behavior and outlook, how you'll interpret and respond to situations. Now, Peter, does that kind of resonate with what you were getting to on the psychology side of things?
Yes, I think so. And I guess, you know, then you could add the competencies of a successful mindset versus a negative or self-defeating one. But yeah, I think it does.
Tell us a little more about. Tell us a little bit more about the frame around the success element.
Well, I think when we're calm and relaxed, our brain tends to work at you know, higher level functions, And, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system that screens out data or unnecessary data.
Yes.
So if I have a mindset that, all right, we're going to find a way to do this, my perception is open so I can find possibilities. But if I have a mindset saying, well, it did work before, it is not going to work, then I'm going to look for all the data and almost unconsciously to support that mindset or that view.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's exactly spot on. The RAS filters out unnecessary data, and it tends to line up with your belief system. So it acts as, from an intentional faculty perspective, it acts as a filtering system specific to those kinds of unconscious processings that you've already patternized, you've already worked with, you have a strong intentionality around it, strong emotions connected to it. So it helps to line things up and work in your favor.
Yeah, I'm just looking up one thing real quick for you guys. People are using productive tension all over the place. That phrase. Well, we own the federally registered trademark on the term productive tension. We also own the trademark on tension management. So it's very interesting whenever I see a Google alert. One of the things let me just slide this into the screen so you guys can kind of understand what I'm looking at. I went to the productivetension.com website, which now is nothing more than a giant file cabinet. We don't really point people to it all that much, but nevertheless, it's filled with all kinds of good stuff. Well, one of the things that we talked about was the reticular activating system. I do believe. Did we?
I think you did, where it was in the arousal, different arousal.
Right. And there was something about that once it gets flooded, that's where the concept of the threshold of activation kind of
exactly
came into play. I'm just kind of trying to read and talk simultaneously. Not something I'm very good at, I don't mind pointing out. Here we are, RAS. Giuseppe Maruzzi and Horace Magoon, 1949. Pardon me. Among the 20th century's most eminent neuroscientists and known best for their discovery of the brain's reticular activation system, Maruzzi and Magoon presented a significant refinement to the Yerkes-Dodson law. The RAS is the brain's attention and motivation center and serves as a point of convergence where physical sensory activity about the outside environment and our internal intellectual and emotional activity come together, where our two worlds meet. As activity in the RAS increases, so increases our attention. And once activity reaches a threshold of activation, immediate action is taken. The threshold can be reached through any one or combination of the three forms of activity and can take anywhere from nanoseconds to an eternity to reach. Sudden flooding of the RAS results in overload and compromises our ability to focus on the situation. Does that
and see,
line
this is
up
the
with what
same
you were
thing
saying?
with the emotion. And it's the same seat of emotions as well. See, those systems, when they talk about this convergence, it's like a hub, kind of like a 8-lane highway coming into one. And these systems create something that's called a default mode network. So it really does become, that's what I meant when I said patternized.
Yes.
So we have certain mindsets, and imagine people who, get stuck in that for 20 years, 30 years, however many years, unless they actually reconstruct literally the constructs that they're operating out of, you're not going to see true change. You'll see temporary change, but they'll result back to whatever that default mode is.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think you guys all received a chat message from Tim. He's in a place where it's too noisy to chime in. So he says, your mindset is a set of beliefs that shape how you make sense of the world and yourself. It influences how you think, feel, and behave in any given situation. And that came from verywellmind.com. what mindset is and why it matters. So now I wanted to just have this discussion about mindset because I'm wondering what the relationship is between mindset and the change grid. So is the change grid a map of mindsets, or is an individual mindset, does each individual's mindset contain a complete change grid? So thoughts about that? Do you have a mindset, and inside of your mindset there is an apathy and a stress response? There is an in-grid, up-grid, out-grid, down-grid. Is that all present inside of every mindset? Or is there one change grid and scattered all over it is every mindset we can describe?
That's what I would agree with. If you define mindset as frame of mind, as a neutral starting point, you can go anywhere on the change grid.
Okay, all right. And see if this ends up resonating with what Peter was saying and Brian's been saying about the psychology and the neuroscience behind all this. Is it fair for us to say that this driver energy, as we tend to describe the outgrid quadrant, is in and of itself a mindset?
Sure.
And this downgrid, similarly, this is a mindset. Oh, just 1 second, Kathy. Let me on. Oh, more people have joined in, but I couldn't see them. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Chris. Feel free to chime in. Go right ahead, Kathy. You had your hand up.
Thank you. I haven't been here for a while, so it's nice to be back. Just a quick comment. I feel like, and I am not sure if that's what David just said, that I feel like from every person's perspective, they do carry around a change grid, a full change grid. It's just that it looks different than the other perspective.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Well, and that's we've talked about how we wonder. Okay, we can look at the change grid at a macro level, at a micro level. We can say that you and your personality or what you happen to be going through at this point in time lives on the grand change grid of life somewhere. But inside of each and everyone's reality, they have their own change grid. And so if I am by nature a driven driver, that doesn't mean I don't have an apathy response, but my idea of an apathy response as a driven driver personality type or driven driver energy could be very different than someone who tends to live downgrid. Yet there is this grand change grid of life, and usually there's reverb behind that. So grand change grid of life. And on that, there is a spot for everybody and everything. So this is what I wanted to talk about mindset. So for example, if I said to you, can you make some distinctions between the mindset that someone experiences outgrid and the mindset they might be experiencing upgrid? And again, they're talking about beliefs. So tell me anything you guys want to do about it. And you don't have to do those two, but I'm just curious to know, how do you think mindset might change as we move around the change grid?
The mindset of an upgrid person is they don't have the resources, they don't have the knowledge, they don't. So it's coming from a position of lack versus the outgrid person who feels they have everything that they need and just need to push forward.
And how does that change then if the mindset starts to shift downgrid?
If the downgrid person doesn't care, or if they do, it's mild curiosity. So I think it's a very inactive frame of mind.
Yeah. And as far as that idea about having the availability of resources, if we go back to the basics on the 5 levels of tension, we know that people in power view their resources as being, should I do this as a test and ask you guys, if we said way upgrid, they were scarce. And then you come down to power stress, and now they're limited, which is why the person wants to strike while the iron is hot, etc. As we start to move further downgrid, now we're in power. How do people characterize resource availability then? Anyone remember the word? Adequate. They feel like they have enough, and that's why they're being thoughtful and prudent about how they're using those resources. As we start to slip further downgrid, what happens to perceived availability of resources? It ends up going from adequate. Okay, we went scarce, limited, adequate.
Greater
Much.
than adequate.
Yeah, I mean, and I actually, honestly, I'll confess that I forget
Abundant.
exactly what word, but I think it was abundant, and then it was unlimited.
Right.
Down and out. It's a perceived. I mean, they could be dead wrong. No mistake about that. But nevertheless, so I think that's all. That's also comes along with part of the mindset. The people that are downgraded believe they've got way beyond whatever resources they really need, and so they can take their time and they can be a little bit lazy about it. And they can squander things and whatever because they have excess amounts. Certainly this is playing itself out right now in the desert. You know, most of the country is under a drought kind of a condition, except our good friends apparently in Michigan who are dealing with horrible flooding. So
Oh yeah, no, lots of flooding.
yeah, so you could send some of that moisture our way if you don't mind. But you know, it changes your mindset around your use of water. And so I just wanted to bring this up because I believe that mindset, while we might have, how do I put this? We might have our own base mindset that is probably attached to our personality a little bit or attached to our current set of circumstances. But I believe that mindset changes and can change very quickly as information about the world around us changes as well.
Oh yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
agree with that? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And so if I said, then really the mindset is not so much something that you have that you bring to the party with you, as much as mindset seems to be what do I say, a result of a lot of other things that are going on and in whatever that set of circumstances happens to be.
Yeah, that's why I like that word construct, because those
Mhm.
are things that we kind of create. And you know, go to before the pandemic, Warren Buffett's shareholder meetings.
Mhm.
And Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, I forget how old they are. I think they're in their 80s or 90s, one of them. But
Yep, yep.
he always talked about this idea of how he make decisions quickly based on these mental models.
Mhm.
He has over 120. So like he has a mental model in terms of investing. He only invests in things that he can understand and where there's not a big learning curve. But he have other mental models for his philosophy in
Mhm.
life and how he lives.
And so
And
he had actually identified and delineated some of these models. Is that
right, so every year he goes through these instead of, you know, like for people do these New Year's resolutions. So every year he updates them, and he, you know, the ones that aren't
Mhm.
serving anymore, he gets rid of them. And I do this every decade, so I can, you
Now?
know,
I,
go back
I
and look.
I would be very curious to know then what's the difference between what you've just described and perhaps a skill set or a tool set? Because it would
But see,
seem
to
to me
me,
that
they
my mindset gave rise to the creation of whatever these rules to
right.
live by happen to be. But those rules to live by, is that a skill set, a tool set? Did I spell knowledge set? Well, knowledge set isn't even a word, so I can spell it however I want. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah. So yeah,
Can I
go ahead.
add one thing to the conversation?
Please do.
These are the factors that I look at when I take on a coaching engagement.
Oh, do tell.
You know, what is the person's mindset? Where's their skill set? What kind of tool set do they have and have around them? Where's their heart at? You know, do they have emotional intelligence, and do they care about people as well as process? And then I guess if you wanted to throw knowledge set in there as well. So those are all things that I look at when I take on a coaching engagement.
Very interesting. Very
And I think
interesting.
they're all connected. They're all
Well, they
interconnected,
are.
right?
They
Can't
are.
You just can't have the mindset and not understand how it's being applied in the real world, because it's going to look uniquely different. That's what we were just talking about initially on the call, right? In terms of change. So people have a strategic plan, they have the idea, but what they can't account for is how it's happening in real world. And
Yeah,
so
those are
without that
speculative
data
values.
knowledge, exactly.
Yeah.
So they can't, without that knowledge, you can't really fully appropriate the mindset and shift where shifting is necessary. So you become kind of captive in your own mindset, until you're willing to say, okay, yeah, well, that didn't work out. I have to change something here.
Yeah. Let's kind of build on what you guys are talking about and give a couple of these definitions. And by the way, I have no idea who notosh.com is. It's just something that popped up at the top of a little Google search. And I thought, well, their definitions are probably as good as anybody else's as a place to begin. So I'd already read the one on mindset for you. Skillset, they said, is how you act and behave. I'm not sure the difference between acting and behaving, so whatever, based on your capabilities, knowledge, and understanding. So they're incorporating knowledge into skill set, and I would probably do that too, as opposed to say that knowledge set is something totally separate. And there, although when we define ability is defined as the level of knowledge, skill, and experience you've accumulated. And to a certain degree, ability is also impacted by the availability of core physical resources, but that generally tends to impact people's perceived level of challenge more than their perceived level of ability. Okay, I just went off on a little babble fest there, but nevertheless, most of you guys should certainly understand what I just said. Okay, anyway, so knowledge and understanding, as well as your motivation to put your abilities to use. And I went, now we're talking about motivation and actually taking action. I promise you, I have all kinds of skills and capabilities and knowledge and understanding that I possess, totally independent of my motivation to put it to use. So I am not at all convinced that skill set has anything whatsoever to do with taking action.
I would agree with you, T.
Yeah.
I think mindset is about the motivation piece, and tool sets are simply the mechanics. What are the things that you have available to you, whether no matter what form they take. But I agree, skill set can be separate from motivation, and skill set is bound up in, to some degree, in mindset, I think.
Yeah. And now if we throw Toolset into it, it even gets more muddy. So Toolset, what mechanisms you use to develop your skills and achieve your objectives. These can be any number of methods, techniques, models, approaches, and frameworks, a collection of synonyms there, that create value in your chosen field. This just got profoundly muddy for me. Tim just chatted something over to everybody. Let's go ahead and read his contribution here. Professor Carol Dweck, an American psychologist, found that we all have different beliefs about the underlying nature of ability. Children and adults with a growth mindset believe that intelligence and abilities can be developed through effort, persistence, trying different strategies, and learning from mistakes.
Yeah, she talks about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. That's what her research is based on in children and adolescents development. And so the growth mindset is certainly more open, whereas a fixed mindset, there is nothing to change.
And is the thought that we basically move from having a open mindset as a child, and as life goes on, we become increasingly fixed? Unless
through experience, sometimes these things kind of teach you that is the way. Like you become inculcated in certain ideas, and so it becomes a challenge for you. Because if you hear most of the social psychologists I know say when a person is so-called stuck in a rut, one of the first things they need is optionality. They need options, and if you can't see there are options, then there are none for you.
Well, and they have to want to see those options as well. Obviously, if we just look at the way that society is operating at this particular juncture in the...
If I can make a comment here about that, a couple of things. First of all, this list, skill set has to do with the person, and tool set has to do with inside the person, and tool sets have to do with things outside the person.
Yay! That's what I was going to get to. Yay!
That's the main difference. That's the main difference. When we talk about the Carol Dweck thing, that concept is really important because you think about our educational system, and without a Carol, in a fixed mindset concept, and this is the way many of us were raised and schooled, is that we were put into tracks. There are the smart kids, there are the middle kids, and then there are the dumb kids. I'm being really, really rash about it. I'm really not, but we were all tracked as kids, and at least when I was growing up in the American school system. So that people, and what that develops is ceilings, you know, fixed mindsets. And I've always been amazed to meet the people that I knew from high school who were put in the lower levels and how incredibly successful they became later in life.
Right.
As opposed to the kids who were in the fast track, who are still struggling with what to do with their lives. I mean, it's funny, but you can project that onto cultures. There are fixed hierarchy cultures where people know their place. There are caste systems, which we have in the United States as well, but caste systems, and those who don't. And so that's why I love the Carol Dweck concept, because it's like, what's open? If you see yourself as limitless, you are limitless. And if you see yourself, or other people have told you you're fixed, you have a ceiling, then it's a lot harder to break through that ceiling. And that has a lot to do with.
And so as you become increasingly fixed in your mindset, is that also where your biases are coming into? I wish Tim was someplace he could unmute. He's our current resident authority on all things related to bias. But a lot of you guys, we've all talked about it before. But what do you think happens? Because I know that there's a lot of people that I, meet living where I live, that talk about being fixed. These people are rigid. Openly denying that any other options could possibly exist. And I also noticed that they tend to be profoundly biased and selective based on their biases.
Yes.
So, that again tells me that biases are learned. So do children start off free of bias and very quickly start?
Yeah, because all that Kathy just described, you think about it, for a child, adults try to cap that, right? They try to cap their imagination, say, oh no, you don't want to, you've gone too far. And really haven't. There's this exploration. So the mindset, when you look at it from at least a neuroscience perspective, becomes baseline. You always want to know, what is your baseline? Has that baseline grown any? Or is it, what's inhibiting that baseline? Because then it becomes challenging for any of these other interconnects in terms of tool sets, skill sets, and things to be useful for you when you have a limited mindset, or if it's really fixed.
Yeah. And you know this, Brian, from neuroscience, as babies are all born with all of the potential for growth of all the neurons. And that they actually, and they become limited over time as culture comes into play, as parents start teaching, as people, we actually become more limited than what we were at birth.
Because certain pathways get established, others get shut off.
So T, interesting question for you. Interesting for me. So as a child, when life begins, is it the thought that we all start out at 6'6"?
Well, I would say in those first moments, we're probably at 0-12 because of the kids screaming, but shortly thereafter, they're going like, who are all these people? Turn off the lights. Yes, but shortly thereafter, I would say yes. They're trying their best to be at a 6'6" experience, and certainly if we add in the thought that what a child is a spirit who's now moved into a form of transportation and expression, then I would like to think that there's a lot of that initial 6'6" kind of,
So then all the outside influences begin to set those parameters for their mindset as you grow.
Yeah, well, and see, I keep wanting to get back to this mindset thing, because I don't think mindset is something that you have, and it's, it's not like it's locked in place. I get the idea about growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, but I kind of believe that whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset depends on where you are on the ChangeGrid.
I've often heard it likened to like a thermostat, though. That's why I heard a lot of analogies around thermostat. Your mindset is like a thermostat where you set it to, and that's based off of your abilities and some of the other things that were mentioned. And it's subjective to external forces like
Oh, yeah.
weather, temperature, and all that.
Well, what I was going to say, external forces based on expectations of others.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
let me see if I can throw it this way, because this last little thing, I don't know who this person is, honestly. I don't want to say anything disparaging about them. Oh, Ewan McIntosh. So working through the 5 phases of the NOTOSH design thinking process, okay, it's critical that your team's mindset should be open and receptive to new ideas, to the opportunity to view the world differently. And when he says that your team should have this mindset, does that mean he wants to recruit people who already have that mindset? Or does he recognize that that mindset is something that everyone can actually have an experience, and it's more natural for some than others? You know, I think mindset, if we talk about tension management, can we talk about mindset management? Or can we just talk about how mindset is going to change based on how we move someone around on the change grid?
Yeah, the language of should sounds very, how do I say, systemic, in that
Mhm.
it implies that something is already that way or should be that way when I hear that word should.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's a definite idea that there's something else out there that isn't aligned with our unique interactions, our unique
Right, right,
um,
right. Well,
connections.
should is often someone else's value system being
And
imposed on
right,
you.
that's where I'm going with it. I just didn't know how to
So,
articulate it, but that's what
I,
that sounds like.
how many of you know who Shel Silverstein is? Shel Silverstein.
I don't
I
think
know
I've
the
heard
name. I
that.
can't quite place who he
Okay,
is.
Shel Silverstein is 2 things. Number 1, he is the writer of a lot of children's books, seemingly children's books. He
Oh,
wrote The
yeah.
Giving Tree. He wrote Where the Sidewalk Ends. He wrote a lot of these books. If you do a little search, you'll see he's got all kinds, probably a good 10, 12 books that were at least on surface written for children. Um, he was also for many, many years the principal cartoonist for Playboy magazine. So has talk about a diverse background. He certainly has it. Well, one of the poems that he wrote in Where the Sidewalk Ends goes like this: listen to the mustn'ts, child, listen to the don'ts, listen to the impossibles, the never wills and won'ts, listen to the never had, then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child, anything can be. And I think that's what he's talking about, you know, this idea about people saying you shouldn't, you couldn't, whatever. Why are you imposing that on my reality? So,
Yeah.
you know, I can do just about anything. And okay, so again, I wanted to get this back to the change grid for just a second. I believe that everybody has a mindset. At this very moment, all of you are experiencing a mindset of one variety or another. I believe that your mindset after this call could be different, and later on this afternoon could be different. Or it could
Hmm.
be one thing about this particular situation and a different one about this particular situation. So if I said to you, mindset is not something that you are or that you have, it's something that is in constant flux, constantly
Hmm.
changing,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm open to anyone wants to, you know, chime in, feel free. Now, if that is in fact true, then something must be driving the mindset that you're having at a given moment. There needs to be
Hmm.
some sort of a mechanism that gives rise to whatever your mindset is. And that's where I get into what are the perceptions that underlie whatever mindset you happen to be experiencing at that point in time.
Right. Yeah. That's why I like the word construct, because you're talking about to form, combining, arranging parts and elements. Because one of the things that always fascinated me about human behavior in the anatomy lab, when you do, you know, you dissect, you see a brain, you see matter. You don't see what is called mind. So I've always had that question. Okay, well, what is mind? We hear a lot about this, and it's often associated with brain. So I said, okay, something has to be affecting these processes and systems in the brain. Something internally, which from a neuroscience perspective is called interoception. So it's all these internal states, and it's looking for balancing, and it's always scanning what's going on externally, looking to reflect that balance. And when there's a disconnect between the two or some kind of abnormality, we're going to experience it. That's why emotions is first something that happens to you. It's something that is picked up, that your body picked up is going on in the environment that's underneath the radar of awareness. And so, I think you're spot on with that. It's a construct. It's something that's being
And it's something that you can construct in an instant.
absolutely.
No one needed to invest time and energy in developing constructs the way we talk about societal constructs and things like that. We're talking about at the individual human level. We create all kinds of things on the fly. Whatever.
What I love is that fluidity of the term construct. And I think that the word mindset carries with it a feeling of rigidity.
Yes, it does. Now, just to talk about the other two that we've been bouncing around about, I do believe that Skillset and Toolset are a bit more measurable. These are things that you can learn, but to me, they just really impact perceived ability. So certainly as my skill set gets more, wider, richer, deeper, whatever, I feel like my perceived ability is going to go up. And certainly when we talk about tool set, what, you're going to give me a bunch of things? So give me the money, give me the whatever the resource happens to be. If we make that distinction between skill set being more internal and tool set being more external, put those two things together. And now I'm looking at things that one way or another are going to impact my perceived level of ability.
Right.
So I would say then that my ability to utilize my skill set and my tool set can be greatly impacted, if not governed, by my mindset. Okay, so if I perceive myself as having very high degrees of both skills and tools, but I have this downgrade energy, this apathy sort of mindset, what am I going to do with all those tools and skills?
Not use them.
Not much.
Use them. Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Not because I'm trying to be belligerent or difficult or whatever the case may be. My issue is I'm downgraded because I don't perceive any real, not just challenge, but if I remind you guys that when people are plotting downgrade, we know we're looking at untapped potential, and that untapped potential translates into unseen visions, unfulfilled missions. Where's the new purpose? Where's the new whatever? Well, if I'm never going to formulate any new vision, new purpose, no new intentions, if we want to look at the engagement rings, well, fine, I can just sit there with my vast collection of skills and tools and do little, if anything, with it. Linda and I have a friend who has a son, and the son holds 4 different PhDs. Wow. And has really never worked in any of those fields. But he does love learning. So when I go like, okay, well, obviously he has a very different mindset around what education was for. He didn't go into his educational course work because he intended to do something with it as much as he just intended to have it, gain it and grow it. So that's what I'm saying. It's like you could have vast amounts of knowledge and skill and experience and all those things, but if you don't have the right level of perceived challenge, your mindset isn't going to be one that puts that stuff into use. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah,
But yeah, and so this is where, like, when that last thing we just read said, your people have to have this mindset. Well, I want to say to them, my people don't have to have that mindset. I'm the manager. I'm the leader. I need to awaken that mindset. That burden's on me. And if my people don't have the right mindset, I don't need to be pointing at them as the person to blame. They're a reflection of my effectiveness as that leader.
Yeah, I agree
Right.
with that, T. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I'm the one that needs to help them to open their minds, or I'm not much of a leader. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, go
Well,
ahead,
T,
Pete.
yeah, I think too, a leader can shut them down. A manager who's unaware can shut people down, and then they get upset that people aren't motivated.
Right. And I believe they shut them down a lot more often than they what's the opposite of shutting someone down? Enlivening them,
Yeah.
opening them up, you
Well,
know?
that's my job security.
Well, that's all of our job security. The good thing that all of us, we need to remind ourselves, count our many blessings, that the vast majority of businesses that exist on this planet are profoundly screwed up. And
Yeah.
that gives us unlimited opportunity to be of service.
Yeah. I think that what Kathy was talking about in terms of waiting for motivation to apply the skill set is important too. So when I look at this research from sports medicine and see these professional athletes, many of them say they never wait for motivation for them to do what they need to do.
Mhm.
They scaffold it along the way, and it's great when it's there when they need it, but they don't wait for that because they say
No,
oftentimes, their bodies are beaten down and they just don't feel like it,
right.
but they know how to build it into their experience. They know how to call upon it and
Yes.
harness it, and
Yeah.
that's uniquely different.
Yeah. I used to send out these shock sheet mailers back in the days when that's how you actually found clients. And one of my shock sheets had proved to be most successful in bringing me client inquiries. It was real simple. It said, motivation is not the problem, discipline is.
Mm,
And so the whole thing was around, yeah, but under what circumstances do you develop discipline? So motivation is a tool for developing discipline. But once you have the discipline, you don't need to be motivated anymore because the discipline is there. And
mm,
so it was an interesting thing to kind of look at. What's motivation? What's discipline? And one of the things that I wrote was about it was that motivation is not a cosmetic. This is a paraphrase, but hopefully close to being the actual what I actually wrote. Motivation is not a cosmetic that you blindly apply to a superficial flaw. It cannot be found in a book or on a tape or in the rah-rah energizing words of a paid performer. True motivation comes from having the skills that it takes to produce the results that you are looking for in increasingly difficult situations. So
mm,
show me someone who all three of those requirements are met, and I'll show you someone who's motivated, but they would say, well, I'm not really motivated. This is what I do. More so than
mm,
describing it as, yeah, that motivates. But you have to have the skills that it takes, because if you don't have the skills, how does that impact your desire to move forward on something? You
mhm,
don't have what it takes to produce the results that you are looking for. So it should be something that's driven by some internal factor. And then the last one, in increasingly difficult situations, because we know if challenge remains the same or actually goes down, what happens to performance?
Diminishes.
It
yeah.
diminishes. This belief that if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. Mathematically, it does not hold true. You will get less and less of a return on that because the world kept changing. You didn't adapt. Less attention is being paid to details, and so there's a sloppiness that comes into play. Anyway, I bring all this up just to because I wanted to just say that this thought that mindset is a thing that someone cultivates and someone owns and someone lives inside of, to me, is doing a great disservice to the power of mindset. The real power of mindset is that you have the flexibility to adopt whatever mindset is most useful to you at a particular point in time. And that means in order for you to best serve in a given set of circumstances, you may need to set aside whatever mindset you were holding earlier and open yourself up to a new mindset or what. And it'd be interesting to look at where is the cause and where is the effect in that whole change. But um, I'll give you an example. We know that problem solving is something that is needed more upgrid than downgrid. Why should that be a statement of the obvious? Why is problem solving more important upgrid than it is downgrid?
Well, less perceived resources, less perceived, it's more challenge.
Yeah,
Well,
I have a problem. Go
you
ahead,
have a
Kathy.
problem.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say that you have a problem to be solved. So
that's
you,
right. That's everything north of the heart line represents some sort of a puzzle, some sort of challenge, some sort of problem. So the reason why problem solving is more important upgrade than downgrade is because upgrades where the problems are. So I need to solve them. Well, if I need to solve a problem, but I have the mindset of someone who's very far in grid, what do you think happens? How does that amiably based mindset affect problem solving?
Hmm.
I mean, think about that. What or how? Well, let's go the other way around. What energies do I really need in order to solve a problem and solve it well?
You need outgrid.
I need a little bit of outgrid. Why? What's that outgrid energy contributing to my problem solving?
the driver, it's the analysis, it's the engagement, and it's
Right.
the, yeah.
Wanting to get something done. I want to get something done. We need to solve this problem for whatever reasons are underlying it. What other energies do I need? Someone mentioned some analytical energy because there is something that needs to be figured out. There is something there, but
But you have to execute. You actually have to try something different, right? So
yeah. Well, first I'm going to brainstorm a few things, and hopefully I'm going to, good problem
right,
solving
that
as an
intention.
exercise. Yeah, formulate an intention, put it to the test once we've narrowed it down. So that analytical energy, though, I believe is a secondary one to the expressive energy. So it's a problem.
Ah,
Why do I need a little bit of upgrade energy? I mean, look, if you want to look upgrade, 50% of all upgrade energy is expressive. Actually, more than that, because there's expressive. So most of the energy found upgrade is going to be an expressive energy in either the primary or secondary position. So I'm thinking I need to have that analytical expressive energy because there is something that needs to be figured out. That's the analytical part being summoned up. And for whatever reasons, what's happening is bothering me, right? That's that
mm,
expressive element coming into play. I don't like it. I feel in some way threatened by what's going on, or I have that, remember the characteristic emotion of power stress is lust. I want something and I don't have it and I want it. And so that's also an expressive energy. Yeah. So that's why problem solving, it comes into play right here. That combination of that amiable driver energy meets the analytical expressive energy. These are our good problem solvers.
T, this is Peter. Where would you put urgency in that mix?
It's coming up grid, depending on how far up grid I am. The further up grid I plot, the more urgent I am. But certainly anything in the northern hemisphere of the change grid has a greater level of urgency. Now, if I'm right here at the heart line and I just move only slightly up grid, urgent might be too, I want to say, too extreme of a descriptor for what I'm feeling there. Maybe I just feel a little anxious. Maybe I just feel a little bit of fire under my feet, as opposed to we got to do this now, which is much more up grid. So some way or another, though, that concept of urgency is present and exists on a continuum from the heart line all the way up to the danger zone of power of upgrade danger zone. Yeah. So sense of urgency. Now, I would say that there's also a feeling of urgency that happens in the driver energy, but is that really urgency like the situation is demanding it versus someone pushing me?
No, it is not situational. It's more of how you choose to respond.
Right. This is more intentional. This is more deliberate. Now, is there an element of urgency going on? There could be a deadline, but when I think of urgency, I always think I have to do this and I have to do it now. Well, if I'm an outgrid, and again, we always use that Olympic athlete as kind of a good example of healthy driven driver. Um, is there a sense of urgency when your event is going on, or is it just, no, it's test time. This is what I'm here to do. Hmm. I don't know if I would use the word urgent to describe oh, I just used the word mindset. No, I don't know that I would use the word urgent there as much as this is what we came for.
Yeah, they always say this is what we prepared for. Because
Yeah,
even like some of the interviews after like the game winning kick or something like that, and reports that say, well, what were you thinking about? And they say, well, we weren't. This is something we prepared all the whole season for.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they're
yeah.
always looking for that opportunity to execute at a higher level, but that's something that they actually
Right.
train themselves
Well,
for.
and they're eager for that test to occur.
Hmm.
So that's where I go, okay, if we say, and truly, if you look at the adjective map, problem solving occurs right here. Well, that has enough of an urgency coming along with it because of the expressive energy contribution, but it also has this determination, this decision, this um, what other word? Don't want to keep using the same ones over and over, but it's a deliberate, intentional choice that the person is being made, and they're ready for the test. They're looking for the test. They might even be the one who wants to bring the test along, whatever that. So I think to Peter's point, yes, there is an urgency, but there's another little feeling that I think comes along with it when it comes to problem solving. The anticipation of satisfaction when the job is done. I think that's also an outgrid kind of I was going to say mindset again, part of that mindset. Hmm.
That
If you think,
deliberate word is good, actually.
Yeah, yeah. The deliberate mind lives outgrid. Go
well,
ahead,
if you
Peter.
think about the vaccinations, the breakthrough of the vaccination. So imagine, there were so many people just, really high on the grid to get what can we do to stop this pandemic.
Yep, 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 yep. And so look where they were. Now, it's interesting because again, I'm going to believe that the majority of the people who were involved in developing the actual vaccine would certainly think of themselves as being more analytical than not. So we have to kind of say this was an analytical's way of doing problem solving. So they always bring themselves with themselves to whatever the table is. So I get it. There's this very heavy level of knowledge, skill, experience. All that stuff is certainly present. Nevertheless, they're being called upon to solve this problem. And they're going to approach it differently than someone who is primarily an outgrid person who does not have that level of knowledge, skill, experience, education, training, etc. But they're in a gigantic hurry to just make it all happen. Well, I don't want them developing vaccines. Vaccine is a science. It needs to be done by people that are down grid. Yeah, but nevertheless, there's a problem to be solved. There is a sense of urgency. There is, by the way, as all that was happening, did you guys ever detect that there was also a competition afoot to see which
Oh,
company?
sure.
Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah.
so there
Hmm.
was some outgrid energy going on there too. So, but the motivation was different. So, urgency to solve the problem because people are dying versus urgency to be the first to solve the problem because all kinds of fame and fortune could come our way. You know, anything
And
from a
isn't that
Nobel.
the American way?
Well, I think it's the way of the outgrid energy, and I bring that up only because isn't Pfizer? I know is it an American company or doesn't it?
Oh,
German,
absolutely. No,
but it has
Pfizer's
German roots too, doesn't it?
no, Pfizer's a global American company. I mean,
Oh,
it's
okay, okay, okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But I'm thinking like there were a lot of different countries that were going like, oh, we can do this, we can do
Aren't they
this.
out of Kalamazoo?
What's that? Kalamazoo?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pfizer. Yeah, I think their headquarters Kalamazoo.
Hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. All right. So I know I've babbled a little bit, but we haven't gotten around to the one I really wanted to talk about, and that's where does Heartset come into play? And by the way, I'm willing to say knowledge set belongs down here with ability as well. So skill set, tool set, knowledge set is all about impacting perceived ability. But something about mindset is the result of my level of challenge I'm facing at that point in time, where does Heartset come into play? That's what I'd like to talk about. Now, there are a couple of little diagrams that people threw out there. And again, do a Google search, you'll find these among dozens, if not hundreds of others. I have not vetted this. I just saw it and went like, oh, that's interesting. So if you look at how they've chosen to create this, this isn't a Johari window. What do you call it when you do concentric circles overlapping one another?
Venn
A
diagram.
Venn diagram. Thank you very much. So a Venn diagram. And so they said, oh, well, there's these three things, and skill set, mindset, tool set. And if you got a great skill set and a great tool set, you might be missing the correct mindset to do the job. Got the right mindset, beliefs, thoughts, perceptions. I'm still wondering, how do you actually use this with a client, but whatever. They say then you get peak performance if you have all three happening together. I don't know that I would argue with that, but it depends on what the situation is as we go about defining peak performance. Peak performance in an outgrid situation is different than peak performance in an upgrid situation, or peak performance at a midgrid situation. Nevertheless, it would be true that even if I want to say I want to go to the center of the change grid, I would like to meditate, do it effectively, do it properly, whatever that means, and go from there. Well, I would say I do need to have a certain mindset in order to do that. I need to have certain skills. I do need to have certain tools, but that peak performance experience would be occurring at the center of the change grid, not outgrid. I promise you, people that are outgrid are not effective at meditation. So that's just not where that lives. So, but I go, okay, where's the Heartset piece? Where's the people piece? And then there was another one I saw. I thought this was interesting, talking about, oh, this is back to Notosh. Mindset, immersion, synthesis, ideation, prototyping, and feed forward. They've really put some energy into this. Okay, well, might want to take a deeper look at that one. I thought this one was interesting, was believing in themselves, believing in you, believing in it, winning minds, the leadership flywheel. Okay. And then this one, mindsets and skill sets go to portfolios and a new state of being. Yeah. So I threw these out just as a few random ones I chose because I just want to say a lot of people are playing with these words and playing with these concepts and creating all kinds of different things that apparently have enough merit that they've created a diagram around it and some descriptions around it. But I still think it's just something that happens on the change grid. Yeah. All right. Final thoughts about this. So we can pick it up again on Tuesday if we really want to do a deeper dive into where these things live, and giving you guys a little bit of a hint. Once I put Heartset into play, how does this move on the change grid, and how does that relate to emotional intelligence? So that's where we're at. Final thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I was going to say Heartset
focus
is
on
the energizer.
Yep.
Heartset.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kathy. You and then David.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David. I was just starting to say, for me, Heartset is the energizer because it's what you're feeling,
where you're
and
coming from,
how you connect. Yeah, it's how you connect to the situation. So
right. So we'd be talking about things about authenticity, genuineness, inclusion, that sort of thing.
I mean, that's even too abstract for it. It's just it's more, what are you feeling at the time?
Okay.
Where do you want to be? Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. And David, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't want to get away from our applying this, to potential client situations and keeping our focus on application.
Well, right. And I think that's what I want to be able to walk away with by the time we're done, because if people are kind of going like, oh no, mindset, skill set, and tool set are being visually depicted as being equal contributors to whatever the peak performance happens to be, I don't really know that that's true.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
I think we've all had a lot of clients who put all kinds of time and money into expanding skill sets and tool sets, but do nothing to manage the mindset, and certainly nothing to manage the heart set, or to get into what
Yeah.
Kathy's talking about. How are people actually feeling about whatever it is that's going on?
Yeah. There's a quote by that I remember of Aristotle that I think about heart set in that way. I think it says something about the quality of life must be the thing at which all things aim. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so I'm thinking about that because think about like from a physician's perspective, it's not just about lifespan that we're looking at, we're also looking at health span. Health span deals with quality of life. So the intersection between two comes with a heart set mindset. So if someone's given a diagnosis, I think our best aim, according to Aristotle, should be to help them in both that quality of life as well as the lifespan for however many years they have left.
right, right, right. Yeah, and I think that when we kind of add in what Kathy was saying earlier about um, a skill set being more of an internal thing. Skill set is something that you have, and tool sets are things you have access to. I think we can then go, well, those are both more external than they are internal. Even the skills, because I had to develop them, and so I was doing something outside of me or whatever, perhaps to be able to do those. But when I think about mindset and heart set, these are things that are going on in someone's brain, even if you want to believe their heart, as we're describing it, resides in their brain,
Hmm.
their spirit or whatever. It's all happening up there in your head.
Hmm.
So that's what I want to look at. And to David's point, sooner or later, this has to prove to be a practical addition to the understanding of the change grid. Because my big fear, I'll just throw this out. My big fear is that there are a lot of companies out there who have bought heavily into this mindset tool skill set sort of model, and are out there operating and working with their team members and all that. And I feel like I need to go into those companies and clean up the mess.
Hmm.
Yeah, because it
So
doesn't work.
I thought it doesn't work because it's missing something or some things that are absolutely fundamental. And what's more fundamental than understanding how tension um, gives rise, or the change grid, gives rise to what your mindset actually
Yeah.
is, where your heart set
Because
is.
they're probably positioning it too as what you call the best practices
Yeah,
kind of
of
thing. So
course.
it's a one size fits all. And best practices in my mind, it implies finality. And
Mhm.
so, your best practice last year, since this pandemic is going to be uniquely different. That's, companies are struggling to bring people back and figure out what that looks like. So I see the heart set mindset as a way of, you call it a process of continuous value generation. It's like, how do we keep this regenerative thing going? And
Yeah.
so then we don't have to look for just the next best thing, the next best trend, but we're very strategic, we're very deliberate, we're practical, we can measure this thing in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great, Brian. I love that. Because best practices, all they do is maintain the status quo wherever it is at the time.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I really like. That's very dynamic, which is where we need to
Which,
be.
and I was about to say, if we add in spiral dynamics to the whole thing, we got to be able to move up, 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 up. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, best practices tend to be anchors.
Mm.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. I read this final paragraph and then we could be finished, because I just want you guys to tell me if I have completely lost my command of English as a language. But this this mindset, skill sets, tool sets crib should be used along with the advice on notosh.com lab, and is made available on a Creative Commons share and share alike, non-commercial, no derivatives license. Remember, a mindset, and that's possessive, not just for Christmas or a Notosh workshop, it's for life. Please share your own design thinking project stories with others on notosh.com lab by emailing a scan or photo along with a story of how it's created impact. I'm going like, lot of words there. I don't know what do you want from me? Okay. Anyway, there you have it. Okay. Yeah. So everybody have a wonderful weekend. Oh, actually, it's 4th of July. So yes, do whatever it is you do for 4th of July. I know Dragon's got to have big plans for America's Independence Day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, have a burger and think of us.
Will do.
Yeah, there you go.
Have fun.
Okay.
Have fun, you all.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay,
Take care.
great. Thanks. Bye all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.